I had just dropped a pallet of citrus disinfectant in Bay 7 when my phone buzzed with a Venmo notification I wasn't even supposed to see. It was a comment under a payment between two of our friends, Lauren's baby shower, congrats, and a photo of a pastel cake with piped letters that spelled out a name. My wife's maiden name was right there on the frosting like a slap. She said, when I asked her later, that it was a different Lauren. But the guest list in the caption showed her closest friend, the one who signs everything with a heart and a lowercase y. The thing about working logistics in a port is you learn to trust timings and tags. If a crate says it's coming from Houston at 0700 and it shows up at 0500, you know someone's manifest is lying. My marriage had a clean manifest. Nights she worked as an RN at the pediatric ward in St. Pete, weekends off, us every Sunday getting grouper sandwiches from the same spot on the causeway. I didn't know I'd been trusting the wrong tags. The baby shower post hit on a Sunday, her Sunday, the one she'd stepped out of because she picked up overtime. I told myself it was a coincidence, because men like me like brick walls and simple answers. I told myself I was being dramatic. Then I saw the cake again, zoomed in, and the piped letters weren't just her maiden name. The frosting spelled our little N. The N matched a name we once joked about while driving home from a Rays game, back before our bedroom turned silent if I breathed too loud. When she got home, sun on her hair, scrubs in the dryer, she kissed me side of the jaw and asked about my day. I said I saw a cute cake on my feed. She frowned into the fridge. People have babies all the time, Tom, she said. Your best friend commented with your old last name. There are a lot of Laurens, she said. You want any of this leftover lasagna? She left her work bag slumped by the door. When I bent to push it aside with my foot, the zipper split just enough for a plastic bottle to peek out. It was shaped like a fat comma, with milliliter markings up the neck and a powdery rim at the top like someone had made a bottle in a hurry. The baby powder smell hit me before I touched it. It wasn't a scent you guessed at, it was a memory that walked back into the room in little socks. I didn't make a scene. We watched a game and pretended we weren't counting how many times the clock turned. She tucked her legs under her on the couch and scrolled. She laughed at something I couldn't see. When she went to shower, I went to the truck for something I told myself I needed. What I took instead was a breath. The passenger seat had a dusting of something white along the stitching, a print of a small plastic lid pressed into the fabric. Baby powder doesn't lie, it drifts and lands, it keeps receipts. Before dawn the next morning, I pulled up the Venmo feed again. People forget the privacy settings don't always reset. The organizer had tagged the venue, a bungalow on a quiet street off 22nd Ave N, the kind with a string light backyard and a creaky gate. Location means time, time means route. Route means you can stand on a sidewalk and tell yourself you just happened to be there. I told myself that and drove. The organizer's house smelled like buttercream. She had one of those decorative chalkboards leaning against the porch rail. Welcome, Baby N, written in swoops. No one was outside. I wasn't going to knock. I wasn't going to be that guy. I was only going to be the guy who needed the wind to carry a laugh to him, to put a face to the letters on a cake. A gust flapped through the side gate. I stepped past it, a trespasser only in the way I couldn't stop my eyes. The backyard had a wall hung with photo garlands. There she was. Lauren, my wife, wearing a light sundress I had never seen, her hair braided back from her face like she always said took too long. Her smile wasn't the one she wore when we sat on the couch half asleep. It was the one she used to have at 23 when we bought our first cheap couch, when we ate cold pizza and swore we could taste the future. On her left, a man I didn't know had his hand on the small of her back. In a later photo, he didn't pretend. He had both arms around her like she belonged where she was standing. I felt something give inside me. It was small, a thread in a seam, but when it popped, I heard it in my teeth. A screen door opened. The organizer stepped out with a stack of paper fans. She saw me and paused like I was a stray dog deciding whether to growl or wag. Then she blinked, and her face softened in a way that told me she recognized me, but only barely. Hey, she said. She was trying to place me. Can I help you? I'm a friend of Lauren's, I said. It wasn't a lie. I had been. Oh, she said. The oh rich with sudden comprehension and a little pity, as if she'd watched a glass knock toward the edge of a table but couldn't move fast enough. You just missed her. Seems like that keeps happening, I said. The organizer pressed the paper fans against her hip. She looked at the photo wall and the surprise on her face shifted to something like alarm. She glanced between me and the photos and made a choice. He's a great dad, she blurted, and then stopped, realizing the sentence had nowhere good to land. I mean, he is. They're happy. You should, Tom, right? She said your name. I'm sorry. He's a great dad, I repeated, trying not to hear my voice go flat. To whom? To. Listen, she said, voice dropping. I shouldn't have said anything. I went very quiet, the way you do when you need gravity to pin you to the earth. I stared at the cake crumbs on the table. The frosting smears were the pale yellow my wife always said looked good with her skin. Is there a baby? I asked. Silence in the sun is louder than a shout. The organizer tucked a piece of hair behind her ear and said nothing that sounded like a no. I left without pitching a single chair. I drove around the neighborhood until sweat glued my shirt to my spine. I parked under an oak and held the wheel like it was the only solid thing left. I tried to think like a doc schedule, to put everything in columns until the math worked. Instead, every column ended with the same sum. She had built a room in another house and hid it behind hospital shifts. When she got home that afternoon, she tossed her keys in the bowl and smiled in that tight way she had learned when we stopped asking each other real questions. I put the paper fans on the counter. She went still. Went to see your friend, I said. Her hand hovered over the bowl of keys, 2 fingers curled like she had just remembered a delicate thing. Why? She said, and fear rode the word bareback. Because your life keeps happening off stage, Lauren. I wanted to see the set. She didn't ask me what I saw. She knew there was only one reason I would come home with party favors. Tom, she said, and pressed her lips into the soft skin of her wrist like there was a prayer there. You can't do this. I'm not doing anything, I said. You are. She looked at the doorway. I had never seen her calculate like that. Her brain had always been a gentle river beside mine. Now I watched the floodgates lower. It's not what you think, she said. It's exactly what I think, I said. It's a baby shower with your name, your friend, your venue. It's a bottle in your bag and powder on my seat and a card addressed to our little N. Her chin lifted. For a moment, I saw the person who fought for kids in the ward when the parents couldn't figure out how. The person who argued with doctors until someone took a second look. I didn't tell you, she said, because you would have burned it all down. And this way, I asked. This way was gentle? She stared at me like I was the one who had chosen a new map without asking. I won't stand here, she said, and be punished for trying not to destroy you. News flash, I said. The building's already on fire. She grabbed her bag. We stood in our kitchen, the place we painted coral because the lady at the hardware store said it looked like sunset and didn't say any of the 1,000 questions a marriage collects like dust on a ceiling fan. She walked past me. I watched her go and I heard a smaller version of myself begging for a recess bell. The thing about adrenaline is that when it dumps, it takes your mercy with it. I called a lawyer on Monday. I outlined what I knew and what I could probably prove. The lawyer said a lot of words that wore suits. Then he said one that didn't. Bigamy, he said. In Florida, it's a crime. He asked me for dates. He asked me for photos. He asked me for the last time I had felt sure about anything. He told me nothing moves fast even when your heart does. He told me to figure out what I wanted to keep besides my pride. After I hung up, I stared at the port schedule. It was an old habit when I felt the ground slant. Lines and numbers mean someone somewhere believed in order. My mind kept slipping back to a necklace she stopped wearing, a weekend she spent doubling, a bruised apple in the trash when we never bought apples. By Thursday, I realized I wasn't going to sleep until I looked her in the eye without the couch between us. I texted and asked to meet. She didn't answer. I went to her hospital instead. I stood under the soft eucalyptus smell of the lobby and watched nurses come and go like streams in a place that never stops raining. She came through the sliding doors with her badge clipped to her scrub top. When she saw me, she flinched like a person who hears a glass break and can't remember where the jagged edges went. Parking lot, I said. My voice sounded reasonable, like a man ordering coffee while holding a detonator. We stood between painted lines while the afternoon heat rose up through the asphalt. She cross-armed like she did when she braced for hard families. You want to yell? She said. Get it out? I want to understand why I'm a ghost in my own life, I said. I want to understand how my wife is a mom somewhere else, and I had to find out from a cake. Her breath hitched. The reflex was human. The stubbornness was something else. I am not married to him, she said. That word is yours. I didn't take it from you. Are you with him? I asked. Yes, she said. It was Queen. We have a child. The air shivered. The ground bent. You know those videos of trucks that are too tall for the overpass and still try to fit? That was every day I had been alive for the last year, bending and scraping while sparks spit from a roof I didn't know I had. How old? I asked. Her eyes pooled. For the first time, she looked less like a defendant and more like someone who had built a house and realized the foundation was sand. 8 months, she said. 8, I repeated. She nodded, jaw clenched like she was biting back an ocean. Why not tell me? I asked. Why not say the thing that I couldn't guess wrong? Because you would have made it ugly, she said. Her voice was small, like the nurses used when they whispered in hallways after a code that didn't go the way anyone prayed. And he didn't deserve ugly. He doesn't deserve you showing up at his job. He doesn't deserve you taking his kids' photos to your lawyer. You think I don't know what you'll do when you hurt? I know you, Tom. I know you go straight for the lever marked fix and you pull until the machine snaps. I would have broken it, I said. And this way I'm... What? The kind man who discovers his marriage ran out of road at a baby shower? She pressed her palm to her forehead. I told you I picked up shifts, she said. You did, I said, just at a different house. I never meant to have a double life. Everyone says that, I said. The asphalt was starting to smell like burned sugar. Do you love him? She looked at me with a grief I didn't know how to unlock. I love my child, she said. I love that he's gentle. I love that there is a part of the day where no one needs me to be strong for dying kids. I needed somewhere to set down my armor. I didn't know how to ask you for that without making you feel like you failed. You could have asked, I said. You were always tired, she said, and then I was tired of asking. We stared at each other like a coin flipping. I don't know which side landed. She left first, a bright badge swinging like a metronome. I stood in the heat until sweat blurred the white paint at my feet. 2 days later, my phone rang with a number I didn't know. I almost didn't answer because a man can only take so many hits before he stops opening doors. But curiosity is a key that fits every lock. Is this Tom? A voice said. Yes, I said. This is Nate, he said. I'm with Lauren. N. Our little N. There are sounds your body makes when it recognizes a thing your mind isn't ready for. Mine made all of them at once. What do you want, Nate? I asked. I want to ask you to stop showing up at places, he said. He didn't sound angry. He sounded like a person who learned early how to keep his voice calm and won all his arguments that way. She said you were following her. She told you I'm stalking her, I said, to explain why I know her other life exists. She told me you're hurt, he said. I get it, I would be too, but we have a baby. He didn't sign up for this, none of this. If you have questions, ask me. Don't scare her. You think I'm going to hurt her? I said. I think people do dumb things when they feel stripped, he said. And I think you have the kind of pride that won't let you be dumb, so prove me right. There was a second where I hated him for being decent. It's easier to aim at a jerk. It's easy to paint a target on a villain. I tried to find the shape of my rage and came up with a man who sounded tired and steady and worried about a baby. How long? I asked. Over a year, he said. I closed my eyes and saw calendar squares with red dots I hadn't put there. You married? I asked. No, he said. We planned to, and then it got complicated because she said she had to figure out the old marriage first. She was going to figure it out with a cake, I said. Silence hummed. If Jad? I'm not your enemy, he said. I can't be your friend, but we can choose not to ruin each other. She chose for me, I said. And now you have to choose for yourself, he said. What kind of man you want to be when someone else writes your story wrong. There are words that stick even when you don't want them. These did. After we hung up, I drove to the bay. The water was flat and indifferent. Pelicans watched me like judges. I leaned on the railing and thought about every time I'd told a new guy on the dock to check his load twice, because what hurts you is always the thing you thought you had locked down. I didn't turn into a saint. I made a folder. I printed what I needed to print. I signed a retainer. I slept in the guest room because the bed where a lie slept doesn't forget. I told Lauren I would be seeking an annulment on grounds that sounded cold when read out loud. She nodded like a student taking down homework. I told her I wasn't going to splash her face anywhere or use a child's photo as a weapon. She nodded again, and her shoulders fell in a way I didn't want to satisfy me, but did. We had one more talk that I keep replaying. It was at the dining table we bought from a woman in Gulfport who promised it would hold every Thanksgiving. We'd only ever used it for pizza and paperwork. The room was the color of old oranges in late afternoon. I'm sorry, she said, almost whispering. For which part? I asked. For all the parts, she said. For the first time, I didn't correct a thing you assumed. For the second, for yesterday, for letting it go long enough that you had to find out from a cake. I would have been ugly, I said. It surprised both of us. I would have broken glass with my mouth. I would have used your same armor and called it duty. But I wasn't given the chance to do it better. I know, she said. I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I'm asking for a way to end this without making us both into our worst selves. You already made me into mine, I said, but softly, like I was speaking to a child in a room with sharp corners. I know, she said, and I carry that. We signed papers. We divided the stuff that mattered and the stuff that didn't, which is always the opposite of what you expect. She kept a set of everyday bowls and left me the light-up letters from our wedding that spelled out our initials. I put them in a box that I labeled with a marker and set on a shelf I don't look at. The annulment took time. It moved like syrup through a thin straw. I kept showing up to work, kept moving containers from one square to the next, kept pretending order could be borrowed if you stared hard enough. I ran at night until sweat stung my eyes. I learned how quiet a house can be. Quiet without the hum of a second toothbrush. Quiet without the casual cruelty of a question left unanswered. The day the judge stamped the thing that erased my vows on paper, I sat in the parking lot and waited to feel like a man again. I didn't. I felt like a person who had survived a hurricane and was staring at a wet slab. Somewhere across town, a child was giggling at a spoon. I wished him nothing but naps and the knowledge that every person who raised him wanted him to sleep through the night. People in stories always end with triumph. My end was smaller and more true. I kept my temper. That was all. I did not post a screenshot. I did not show up at a party with a wreath of evidence. I did not give the baby a story where a stranger was a monster. I took my hands off the levers that weren't mine. Months later, in a line at a coffee truck near the pier, I saw the organizer again. She turned and saw me, and the color drained from her face like she'd seen a ghost. I raised my cup instead of my voice. She stepped forward, eyes shiny. "Tom," she said, "I never meant—" "It's okay," I said, because forgiveness sometimes is just the decision to stop carrying a brick. "He, a good dad?" "The best," she said, and then covered her mouth like she'd broken a rule. "Good," I said. "A kid deserves that." She nodded, slow and careful, like we were moving a fragile box together. When I walked away, the sun was the kind of gold you only get on the Gulf in late fall. My phone buzzed. It was a reminder I'd set to call my sister about taking my nephew fishing. The note read, "Don't be the man who's only his job." So, I wasn't. I took more half-days than I ever had. I fixed the loose boards on my porch. I joined a Tuesday night softball team where I was easily the worst pitcher, and the old guys taught me how to breathe. One of the welders at the port started bringing me empanadas his aunt made. We never talked about marriages. We talked about torque and the weather and the way dolphins surface like they remember you. There's a box in my closet that I haven't opened. It's not ghosts. It's a few photos and a program from a wedding the law says didn't happen. When I brush past it, I picture a room with string lights and paper fans and a cake with a name. I picture a woman I loved at 23 and the woman she chose to be at 31, and I let both exist without forcing them to share a body. I'm not noble. I'm stubborn in a new way. I'm saving my anger for storms I can sandbag. Sometimes I imagine a conversation with the kid. Not now, not soon. Years from now. If he asked me what happened, I'd tell him the truth without the acid. I'd say that the grown-ups made mistakes because they were scared and human, and the bravest thing I did was walk away before I became the villain in his bedtime stories. I was taught to trust schedules and seals and bill of lading numbers. I was not taught to audit my own life. I should have. But I got there. The moral I leave tucked inside this like a note under a magnet is simple. Sometimes the bravest thing a man can do with his pain is to set it down where it can't roll into someone else's crib. 2 questions for you. Where do you draw the line between defending your dignity and doing damage just to even the score? If you discovered a hidden life like I did, would you confront in public or quietly close the door and protect your peace? If this hit you, tap like, leave your take, and subscribe for more stories.